What's up, kooks and shredders? We're all unite in our quest to find a surfboard. I'm Chris J. Ross with bcsurf.com, and we're going to be trying to tackle one of the most frequent questions we get at our shop, which is how do I choose a surfboard? We're going to go through a couple of different shapes and sizes and give you some suggestions and some knowledge to help you in your quest to find that right board. Now in this video, I'm not going to give you any specific sizes because there's too many waves out there and there's too many different type of people that are at different stages in their surfing career, quote unquote. But I'm going to try to hook you up with some suggestions and drop some knowledge. That way you can be better informed and kind of figure out what's going to best work for you. Now there's one thing I'm going to ask you to do, and this is the most important part, is to be honest with yourself about your own surfing ability and the waves you're riding. Way too often we have people coming through who either think they're way better than they really are or think the waves that they're surfing are way better than they really are. And oftentimes, if you're just honest about that, you can really get a board well designed for your ability and for your waves that'll work out so you have the most fun and can ride the waves the best you can out there. Now we've kind of worked out 4 really key areas that you can focus in on how to choose the board and the size. These are skill level and your style, your weight, location of the waves you're surfing, and how often that you will be surfing. Let's check out the first one. With a skill level, generally speaking, the better you are at surfing, the smaller board that you can ride. You're finding the right spots, getting to the right location, surfing the right part of the wave to capture that most energy. That's why you see a lot of people that are advanced surfers on shortboards like this one, maybe a hybrid if the waves are a little smaller or not quite as good. And generally speaking, beginners are more towards like the longboards or the fun shapes. It usually kind of works out like that because of the weight offset. And the better you are, you generally have a little lighter on your feet and you can find that section of the wave. Now also a big factor in determining what size board and what type of board you're going to be riding is your weight. The way this works is that a larger board, such as a longboard or a fun shape, will offset more weight. It catches the wave earlier. It can also ride smaller waves. Basically, the more you weigh, generally speaking, the larger board that you'll need until you kind of develop some skills and stuff like that. Now, a note for all you little grommets, and that means kids for the uninitiated. Kids can actually ride pretty small boards because they weigh very, very little. A 6'0" fish can feel like a longboard to like a 6 or 7-year-old. If you're a parent out there and you're looking for a board for your kid, just a key area is just make sure that they can carry it if they need to be carrying it by themselves and that they can get their arms around to kind of paddle it. As long as you've got those two down, generally they're going to be pretty okay with the flotation because even some of the smaller shortboards are a lot of flotation for them. Next part is location, location, location. And this is a really, really important factor. If you're surfing in a location that has really consistent waves and they're really good, you generally can ride a smaller, more performance-oriented board. On the other hand, if you're at a location that doesn't have as much waves or they're not quite as good, it's going to determine that board size because you might want to choose something that can handle a variety of conditions. Now, if you're surfing something small and mushy, and being from South Florida, a shop over there, this is kind of what we ride, you're probably looking for a board with more volume and a flatter rocker just to fit those waves. That way they fit, they have more fun on them to catch the energy. If you're on someone a little bit better, let's just say in terms of US, we're talking the California coast, you can usually choose something with a little less volume and a little bit more rocker, and it'll fit into those waves a little bit better. The rocker is really, really important, but we'll be tackling that once we come up to some specific boards. Another factor to consider, and this is more if you're kind of starting out surfing or kind of choosing a board in a new area, is how often you'll be able to surf. If you have the option to go every day, whether it's before work or school and after work or school or something like that, you generally can choose a board that's more tuned to the better days. Simply, you can just skip the small days that you don't really feel like going out to and kind of focus in on the better ones. However, if you're the type of person where you really have to, only have the weekends, only have a few days during the week where you can surf, it's better to choose something to handle a variety of conditions from small to a little bit larger. That way, whatever the wave conditions happen to be on that day, you can still get out there and surf. Now, a note for all you guys out there who are choosing your first or maybe second board. There's kind of 2 ways that you can do, especially on your first board. There's the one way which you're going something nice and big, that way it offsets your weight easily and catch a lot of waves. And that's usually looking at a fun shape or a longboard. The other way is you can just jump straight into it if you want to go for the shortboard style and just jump straight on a shortboard and start trying to learn there. So let me give you a couple pros and cons on each to help you make a decision. If we're looking towards the bigger, getting a bigger board like a fun shape or a longboard, the pros is that you can go out more days. When the waves are small, you can still catch waves and catch them and actually get a ride on them. You're not so worried about having sinking on the board and not being able to paddle it very well because larger boards just simply they paddle better and they get into waves a little bit earlier. So yeah, I think you also you increase your skills a little bit quicker because you can learn how to trim, and you can kind of be able to ride a lot of different waves all the time. However, if you want to end up on a shortboard and want to end up more of the performance shortboard range, you will have to make some transitions getting used to each new flotation as you work your way down. On the other hand, you can't just jump straight on a shortboard. My only word of warning on this is it can be quite frustrating. You have to have a certain size wave to really get you in the right push and of the right quality so you can start learning on that shortboard. Because of the lack of volume, it can be a little frustrating because it's very difficult to paddle into them, and you might get kind of smashed around by there just depending on the waves that you're trying to surf. However, if you can surf a lot and often and have a pretty good consistency of wave, you probably might be able to jump on a shortboard as long as you stay committed to it. The benefit there is that you'll be right into that style without having to buy multiple boards, and you can start learning that style right away. In this segment, we're going to go over some specific examples of board to kind of help you narrow that decision and let you know what each kind of genre of board is kind of good for. Right in front of me is one of the most popular types of surfboards worldwide, which is known as a shortboard. This one is usually between the 5'6" to 6'6" range, and the waves it functions best on are waist to a few feet above head high. This board is really focused on performance, so whether it's turns, whether it's airs, hacks, tubes, it can really handle a whole gamut of sizes, and there's tons of different shortboards out there. Some keys on this one is they usually have a pretty thin nose that basically just is to provide some flow of water under while you're paddling, but also to get out of the way while you're doing maneuvers. Overall, these boards have a pretty low volume, but they do have a pretty good rocker, which is the curvature of the board when you view it from the side like this. The more higher the rocker is, or the more U-shaped it is, it fits into more powerful waves, turns a little bit tighter. The downside is it won't carry its energy and its speed over flat sections quite as well. But these boards are meant to surf on waves that have a little bit more power to them, have a little bit more of an almond shape where you kind of see them throwing over, and that way there's a lot of energy in the wave already. Riders who are usually on this are usually about an intermediate to advanced skill because it is a pretty low volume board. So it's tougher to paddle, tougher to get into waves when you compare it to something with a higher volume out there. Now just a note on tail shapes, because you're going to see a lot of different tails on each surfboard, and there's a lot of variations out there. But we just want to cover the main ones to make sure that you have a good handle on kind of what they do. The most popular one you're just going to see out there is the squash tail. This one pretty much has like a flat edge onto it. Now this one retains a small pivot point so you can turn and kind of transfer rail really quickly, a relatively straight rail line so you can kind of accelerate there, but it also can get loose at the right time so you can break fins free for a performance style of surfing. Another one is the swallowtail, and you'll see these on a lot of old school fishes. It maintains a very straight rail line. That straighter rail sets into the wave and helps you accelerate quicker. It also, because of that straight rail line, has that big cutout to reduce your total tail volume. So this helps maintain a nice flowing style and can get loose also. The other style you see is a round tail. Now this is the one that grips the wave the most. This is most useful on a powerful wave where it's really lined up like a point break, as that'll really set and transfer energy into each turn. A final recommendation is especially that if you're coming down off a larger board and kind of working your way down to shortboards, just kind of compare boards to what you've already been riding. That'll kind of give you a good estimation on whether they'll work for you, because you don't want something that's a little bit too low volume. If it's too low and you sink it, unfortunately it's going to be really hard to ride. Another board that's become very popular in the past few years is the hybrid shortboard. Now this is a great decision if you're someone who has a little bit weaker, smaller waves out there, but still wants to mix this with performance. This right here is a Firewire Spitfire. Great example of one of those hybrid boards that retains a lot of performance, but you can still kind of crank this one in smaller waves. Now these ones generally run between, I would say about 5'4" and 6'4", depending on it. There are some smaller and bigger examples there, but that's kind of the general range I've seen these boards in. The big key characteristics of these is more volume and lower rocker. They put a little bit wider nose and tail, as well as a midsection usually, a little bit lower rocker on them so that they can continue their energy and flow over smaller, weaker sections of the wave. The style in here is still performance. You can still knock some air, some turns, but it really helps out when there's smaller, weaker waves, and that's the focal point of all these boards. Then we've got some surfers down in South Florida. These boards really help out down there since the smaller, weaker waves. And if you're in an area that has really good waves, you know there's always a few off days where you might need a little extra help out there. And these type of boards are really, really excellent options. With that bigger volume, lower rocker, they'll continue that energy and help you out a little bit. Sometimes, for me, it even feels like cheating because I'm watching guys bog out on certain sections while I fly right over them. These are usually used from anywhere from beginner all the way to the advanced surfer just kind of depending on what wave they're on and kind of what day it is and how the waves are. Beginners, this is a great option if you kind of want to jump into that shortboard mode, as you still retain all the performance and style, but you've got a little extra volume to help you out for paddling and catching waves. Now this is an example of a little bit bigger board that has a little bit more volume, and this is an example of what's known in the surfboard world as a fun shape. Fun shapes generally range between about 7 and 8 feet, and they've definitely got a lot more volume that helps you catch waves early and also help catch smaller waves. This is also a big choice for beginners and one of the most popular ones out there, as it really helps you because it paddles easy, gets into waves easy, and you can surf a lot of different conditions. These can be used anywhere from ankle high up to about, I would say about, chest high or so. With more skill, you can get a little bit beyond that. Best choices for this type of board is someone who's either starting off and wants more volume, or for someone who wants to mix a small wave board into their quiver to cover those days where your shortboard's really a little too small. This will really help to fill that gap and ensure that you can get out there, have some fun on it, teach one of your friends, just due to the increased volume of the board. This next board on our journey is the longboard. Now this is the most volume of the ones that we're checking out. Longboards generally range from about 9 feet and up. Now there's a couple of different people who most often use these boards. One is the beginner. A lot of times your people's first time on a surfboard, actually standing up and riding a wave, is on one of these because they offer a lot of volume. Thick nose, thick rails all the way through. That way pretty much anybody can stand up one of these and have some fun on a wave. There's also, you've got guys who really like longboarding and the style of it, from just kind of cruising and trimming to nose riding and everything in between. Now there's a lot of different types of longboards out there. Every shape, color, everything, spoon nose longboards to really thinned out performance longboards, and it'd be too much to kind of go through every style for the purpose of this video. But know that this is kind of an integral part if you want to start off on a bigger board and you're just starting off, and maybe you're in an area that has some smaller waves. This is an excellent choice for building up your skills. Not only can you go on pretty much any day out there, whether it's super micro small to a little bit bigger, so you can surf the most often, but it's also easier to catch waves and build that repetition up and up and up. Also, if you're in that small wave area, you can hang on to these forever, as you can surf super micro when your shortboards won't quite work, and kind of work that into your quiver so you have a different board for every different day. It's also something you can grow on stylistically, that way you can kind of learn that longboard style and add that to your repertoire. If you're ever between two sizes and you're really not sure, maybe go for the bigger one. That way, maybe it has a little bit more volume than you really wanted, but you can still ride it. On the flip side, if it's got too low, you're kind of sinking. A lot of companies are also including volume calculations with their boards. One of them that's the most popular is Firewire, and Channel Lines is also starting up in that to give you a volume rating so you can kind of see, wow, I'm dropping this much or I'm gaining this much. So definitely use this tool to check it out. And as always, if you have any questions, hit us up in the comments. I'll try to get back to you as quick as I can, help you out in the surfboard search to find that magic board that works for you.